On Tuesday, after an emergency cabinet meeting, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that the UK will recognise the state of Palestine in September unless Israel meets certain conditions, including ending the Gaza crisis, agreeing to a ceasefire, and committing to a long-term peace process. This marks a major policy shift for the UK, which has historically resisted calls to recognise a Palestinian state. It also follows a similar announcement last Friday by French President Emmanuel Macron, who declared that France will recognise Palestine in September, becoming the first G7 nation to do so. So in this video, we'll explain why the UK has long delayed recognising a Palestinian state, why Labour has now pivoted, and what could happen next. Dive deeper into politics with our magazine Too Long. Yeah, we make a real physical magazine. In the latest issue, we discuss if Starmer just has no vision for Britain, if Farage could become Prime Minister, and ask if we're observing the end of the American order. Find out more by clicking the link in the description. First, let's summarise the UK's historical position. For decades, the UK's long-standing position on recognising Palestine has been that it needs to happen as part of a wider peace process, leading to a two-state solution with Israel. Since the 1988 Palestinian Declaration of Independence, the UK, along with other Western nations, has not formally recognised Palestine as a sovereign state, setting it apart from the vast majority of UN member states, 147 out of 193 of whom currently recognise Palestine. This was due to the belief that recognition might undermine the peace process, challenge Israeli interests, or due to concerns that there was no effective governing authority in Palestine. In 2014, under then Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron, the UK Parliament voted to recognise Palestine in a non-binding motion, although official government policy didn't change. However, Israel's ongoing destruction of Gaza since 2023 has brought the issue back into the spotlight. Last Friday, France declared its intention to recognise Palestine in September, following Spain, Norway and Ireland in May 2024. Attention then turned to the UK and Germany, the two other countries in the so-called E3 alliance with France, which have traditionally been two of Israel's staunchest backers, and both countries which have previously resisted calls to recognise Palestine. While Labour pledged in their 2024 election manifesto to, quote, recognise a Palestinian state as a contribution to a renewed peace process, Starmer and other cabinet ministers have warned against doing it as a tokenistic act, with Tech Secretary Peter Kyle telling the BBC on Tuesday morning that recognising Palestine can only happen when we have a structured diplomatic pathway towards a ceasefire and long-term peace and stability. Other reports have suggested that despite rising pressure from Labour MPs in recent days, Starmer himself was blocking the move, with one Labour official telling the Financial Times that it was because he wanted to stay close to the US. Eventually though, following an emergency cabinet meeting on Tuesday afternoon, Starmer confirmed the UK's intention to recognise Palestine in September. So what explains this pivot? Well, as we see it, there are at least three reasons that Starmer might have changed his mind now. The first is because of France's move to recognise Palestine, which was seemingly designed to spark a chain reaction among its Western allies. On Sunday, France's foreign minister claimed in a newspaper interview that other European countries, without specifying which ones, would also confirm their intention to recognise Palestine this week, and it now looks like the UK was one of those countries. The second reason was growing political pressure. Several Labour frontbenchers, including Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, Health Secretary Wes Streeting and Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood, were reportedly among those pushing for Starmer to recognise Palestine, as well as other high-profile Labour figures such as London Mayor Sadiq Khan and Scottish Labour Minister Anna Sawar. Alongside this, 255 cross-party MPs signed a joint letter to Starmer over the weekend, urging him to officially recognise Palestine. The third and most important reason, though, which itself explains the rising political pressure, is that the humanitarian crisis in Gaza appears to be reaching a point of no return. The UN has for months warned about the dire humanitarian situation, impact of Israeli aid blockades, and risk of mass starvation. And on Tuesday, a UN-backed food security initiative published an alert saying that the worst-case scenario of famine is now unfolding in Gaza. Between May and July 2025, according to the report, the proportion of households in Gaza experiencing extreme hunger has doubled. The food consumption threshold for famine has already been passed for most areas of the Gaza Strip, and the rates of malnutrition in Gaza City grew from 4.4% in May to 16.5% in July. While the alert doesn't constitute a famine classification, the body says that it will conduct a new analysis without delay, concluding that in the absence of rapid and concerted action, famine is inevitable. On top of that, earlier this week, 2 Israeli human rights organizations said for the first time that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, echoing claims made by groups like the Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. A report by the House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee published in mid-July put it bluntly, arguing that the UK should recognise Palestine while there's still a state to recognise. So what does Starmer's pro-Palestine pivot actually mean, and what could happen next? Well, first we should stress that Starmer hasn't actually committed to recognising Palestine quite yet. Rather, he said that he will unless Israel takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, reaches a ceasefire, makes clear that there will be no annexation of the West Bank, and commits to a long-term peace process that delivers a 2-state solution. Starmer's statement is essentially a warning to Israel, raising the possibility for further action if it does not fulfill these criteria. There remain many looming questions here though. For instance, regarding the UK's weapons deliveries to Israel, which the government could stop if Israel ignores Starmer's warning. The next thing to mention is that this is designed to kickstart a serious peace process and bring about a ceasefire. In the coming days, the UK will present a European-led peace plan to allies, including Arab states, which builds towards a 2-state solution and paves the way to a long-term solution on security in the region. The UK, France and Germany are also working on proposals to deliver immediate relief to people on the ground in Gaza, with reports that Germany and France will begin airdropping aid into the territory this week. Finally, there's the question of whether this will in any way affect the US's stance. This does seem unlikely, but Starmer reportedly pressed Trump on Gaza this week, and Trump's muted reaction to Starmer's announcement, saying that he has no view, suggests that his support for Israel does have limits. Moreover, Trump refuted Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's claim that there is no starvation in Gaza by saying that there is real starvation, and adding, based on television, those children look very hungry. Starmer also presented the European peace plan to Trump following the US and Israel's withdrawal from the negotiating teams in Qatar last week, suggesting that a UK-led peace deal could soon be on the table. Ultimately, while the UK's intention to recognise Palestine marks a significant policy shift, we'll have to wait and see whether, if Israel ignores Starmer's demands, the UK really does follow up with further action. And if you want to know more about this topic, then there's plenty of other outlets reporting on it too. Unfortunately though, every news source has its bias, and no matter how hard each of us try, we'll inevitably miss a story, or worse, only hear half of the story in the first place. And that's where our sponsor Ground News comes in. Ground News is a website and app that collects thousands of articles to help you better understand the world around you, pulling back the curtain on media bias. For example, this story about Israeli human rights groups accusing Israel of genocide in Gaza has been covered by more than 119 sources. We know that 31 of these reports have come from the left, while 11 have come from the right. Every story also comes with a detailed view of the bias distribution, factuality scores, and even specific ownership information. But my favourite part of the app and website is the aptly named blind spot feed. It presents you with stories and articles that haven't been reported on one side of the aisle or the other. For instance, if you lean right, you might have missed this story about the worst case scenario of famine now unfolding in Gaza. When it comes to blind spots, it's not just about discovering different stories though. It's also about discovering just how political bias frames the stories themselves. Having a tool that helps you to spot this and helps you take action is a real game changer. It's no secret that here at TLDR News, we're constantly thankful for Ground News. It's such an incredibly useful platform that captures information that you just can't get anywhere else, and keeps you informed in a media landscape that's constantly trying to attract your attention and sway you towards or away from certain political viewpoints. If you're interested in everything that Ground News has to offer, you can get 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan by using the link in the description, or by scanning the QR code on screen. This offer is only available here, so make sure that you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.